When I had a quick look at the self-storage industry, what are the substitutes of self-storage? Right? Absolutely, a residential garage would be a substitute for self-storage. Other substitutes would be industrial warehouses where they've got a lot of empty space, and also these things called removal warehouses, and I'll talk to you about what they were in a minute. So when I went to the diagnostic, I looked down at the substitute section. Is it easy to swap between a free garage or a self-storage unit? It's very simple, very easy to swap. The rate of improvement of substitute services I ignored. That really wasn't relevant for a free garage. It wasn't really improving or anything. The rate of capacity addition. I selected that because free garages in residential. Are we building a lot of garages now with houses, or what's happening residentially now? Are we getting bigger or smaller?
Small.
Much smaller, yeah. So the free storage space is starting to decline. It used to be our garage, but now it's declining. So that's why I said rate of addition is about there. It's starting to decline. And is there a competitive advantage for free space? Absolutely. Very strong competitive advantage. And this last one I simply ignored. So if you look at the market attractiveness chart, see that's very unfavourable. That's your problem with self-storage. Our problem so far is it's not very profitable. The reason it isn't profitable is it's difficult to differentiate the product itself. It's just a garage, and there's free storage space around this substitute. So we've decided we've got some problems in the industry already. Let's have a look at what I wrote on the business plan. If you go to the business plan tab and look down at substitutes, in the description I write a few things. Let's have a look at what we've been writing there. I listed the substitutes as these relocation warehouse storage spaces, portable storage, the residential garages, and the industrial storage. These two, they're free, so they've got a very big competitive advantage, the fact that they're free. This portable container storage required storemen and materials handling equipment, so that's a bit of a competitive disadvantage. And these relocation warehouse storage environments were less secure and also required people. So what did I write about the free storage? If you've got a garden shed or an annex or a garage in a residential property, people don't like paying rent. It's free, so that's a real competitive problem. Also, these commercial prospects, they have big industrial warehouses out west. There used to be a storage chain called Miller's. Does anybody remember Miller's self-storage? Yeah. It's not still around. Kennard's took them over. It was, and Miller's was one of the biggest in the industry at the time. They, Angus Miller called us up and they offered us, I think it was 3 of their self-storage facilities out west, and we declined. We didn't even want to go out there and see them, mainly because of this problem. Because there's lots of big industrial warehouses and it's free space, so you wouldn't have a commercial business out west. Yep.
That's why our potential housing is small.
Absolutely. That's why you focus. Correct. Find small companies, no space. They've only got small little service businesses or product businesses. That's our real market. That's your A-class customer. The guys out west are your D-class customers because they've got lots of storage space. Yeah. Absolutely.
My parents' place is large enough to put a shipping container on it.
Yeah, well, and I'll get onto the container spaces in a minute. Warehouse storage. Has anybody heard of NUS removals? Have you seen NUS trucks running around in UWS? Yeah, they're up on the North Shore here, and what they do is you can store in a place like this. It's got a big warehouse. The floor's all marked, and what you do is you put your goods in that marked area. So it's not really secure, but in order for you to walk in and access your goods, you've got to be accompanied by a storeman. So that's the way they keep it secure. And you really only store it in these places temporarily. You might be overseas for a few weeks, and they'll store it and then they'll shift it into your house. So that was sort of a substitute to self-storage. Self-storage was far more secure because you've got walls instead of these marked spaces. The other one was this portable or container storage. What happened was you stored storage gear in containers, but you needed people with materials handling equipment to go and move these containers around and stack them. So that was sort of a substitute, but there was a lot of cost involved with the people driving all of these forklifts and trucks around, so it sort of wasn't a real direct competitor. So what do I put in for competitive influences? Just a quick paragraph. Let's see what I wrote here. I said the availability of free storage space impacts the profitability of the industry. It keeps the rental rates down. Also, out west, where there's lots of manufacturing and large warehouses, that keeps the rental rates right down too for commercial. What we really got to do is target high rental rates where there are apartment dwellings and office buildings with the small companies. Yeah. That's what I wrote about the substitutes there. Next, what have we done? We've done some entrants. These are competitors that haven't quite entered the market yet. They're coming, or they're going to enter the market. Let's have a look at the life cycle curve effect. I guess they're emerging competitors. They're entering your market. They might be coming in from overseas. You've got to watch out. If they come, they can damage you quite severely if you don't react. Caterpillar, back in the 50s and 60s, who did they fail to see come into their market and react? Who came in?
Cheap migrants.
What sort of cheap migrants? What did Caterpillar make? Big machines. Who did they forget about? All the Japanese, Komatsu and those sort of entrants came into the market. French and Italian, they call them the old world wines, back in the 70s. Who did they not ignore? Australia, New Zealand and now South Africa and South America came in and we took 6% of their market share. So you've got to watch out and watch out for these entrants. General Motors, who did they forget about in the 70s and failed the block? The Japanese on one end and the Europeans on the other. They forgot about Merck and BMW at the top end and the Japanese at the lower end, and they let them in. So if you've got an entrant, watch out, because they're most vulnerable, these entrants, when they're in the water. That's when you rain down on them with machine gun fire. I'm not kidding. Who's seen Saving Private Ryan? Have you seen the opening of that movie? How much, there's this rain of bullets coming at you when you're swimming around the water. Have you seen all the blood? Yeah? That's when they're weakest, when they're in the water. That's when you destroy them. Okay? They're on their knees. The second most weak point is when they're on the beach. Yeah? If they just land, that's when they're also at their weakest. Now, I'm using a war analogy, but this is in competition as well. Do not let them get on land and fortify. Once they build fortresses, then they're hard to extract and they're hard to attack. So the rule for competing against entrants is get them when they're heading to the shore. Yeah. The Japanese, as I said, came in against General Motors with small cars at the low end in the 60s. The Germans went after the Cadillac. Merck and BMW and also Lexus later on took on the Cadillac at the high end. GM then decided to build a mid-range set of cars that all looked the same, got hit by the European-style Taurus and Sable from Ford. So they got hit from all sides. What were the Americans making when the Japanese came in? Making great big crane cars. What should they have done? Yeah, carved out a niche and took them head on with the small cars. But they just ignored it.
But the other thing was there was a fuel crisis at the time,
which also aided the Japanese with the small cars too. Absolutely. There was one car there before the Japanese and they completely wrecked their market position. What was in there with a small car before the Japanese? The what?
Pinto?
No. The European car. What was that? The Beetle. VW. We'll have a look at that a bit later on. They wrecked their position. So anyway, General Motors reacted too late, let the Japanese in. Now, you can see the market shares. You know what GM was back in the 50s? What sort of market share General Motors had in the US? High 50s, almost 60%. Here back at 1990 it's at 35, and today GM's gone to 18, Ford 16, Toyota's now in number 3, so you see there's the Japanese. They've taken over. Last year Toyota eclipsed General Motors only by a few cars, but it ended a 77-year world domination of the car market. Yep.
Did GM move into a different market?
How do you mean?
Didn't they move into the electricity industry?
GM are resurrecting themselves, and Obama will have a lot to do with them moving into the electric market. Again, that's another segment or another niche, but also you throw the electric cars into this, add up all of the global cars, and GM's now number 2. Toyota's now number 1. Only by a few cars, but Toyota's going to submit their place as number 1 in the world. They've certainly firmly done it. They've outpaced Chrysler in the US, and they're now, as I said, number 3. The other Japanese are increasing too. So the idea is, when you're at introductory phase of the market, there's lots of entrants trying to come in. The key is technical expertise. That's the key barrier to entry here at the introductory phase. There's no economies of scale. As you go up this market, that's when these mass marketers come in and they start, and there's plenty of growth, so there's plenty of entrants that start entering the market. The mass marketers come in. Everybody thinks Amazon started the book, online book industry, iTunes started the online music industry, eBay with the online trading aftermarket industry. They were mass marketers that came in after the markets were established. We'll have a look at each of those because they didn't innovate and start these markets. They came in later. Yeah. As you go further up to maturity, then you start, the big guys start developing economies of scale, reducing the cost structure and building barriers to entry, strong barriers to competitive entry. So let's have a look at the diagnostic here for entrants, for self-storage. I went down to entrants. Are there a lot of economies of scale, large economies or no economies in a self-storage facility? What do you think?
Here's an economy of scale.
As you get bigger, you can produce higher volume with the same cost structure, and so reduce your costs per unit. So you're lowering, and for big players, that's usually their game. Get very, very big, lots of volume spread over a fixed cost structure, and then you reduce your costs. So another person coming in hasn't got the same cost structure as you, because you've got a bigger economy of scale. Yeah? Okay. So you think in self-storage, there's a lot of economies of scale? No, there's not. There's very little. You can do. You can run a self-storage facility with 3 people, whether it's massive or so. There's really not. Yeah.
Is that something that's normally replaced with products? It normally goes up, so it becomes easier to make more products cheaper.
Remember we did last week standardization versus customization. Usually products, which is that, becomes mass-produced, and you achieve economies of scale. The cost of making that comes down. Yeah. Services try to remain customised, and they charge more for them. Yeah, they're tailor-made. So it depends on the market. It depends on the product. Yeah. With all the reason why I give you these things and break it down step by step is, in order to think through a business problem, there's a lot of things to think through. But if you go through a step-by-step process, you'll start thinking of all the things, and occasionally you'll start developing some strategies out of it. Do you think there's any brand preferences for a self-storage facility? Would you prefer one brand to another? No loyalty? No. Customers aren't loyal to any brands. Do you need a lot of capital? Do you need a lot of investment to start a self-storage facility up? You've got to build a facility and start it up? I'd argue no. You wouldn't need much. These retirees that started up, they get a bit of a retirement or a redundancy check, and then they're able to flex that up with a bank. Why? Why can they get most of the money from the bank? They leverage it, but why? Yeah, they've got the property. Yeah. Normally, banks will run a mile. If you've got some sort of crazy technology idea and want to start up a business and go to a bank, the bank will run away from you. But if you've got property, which is what this business is, the bank will lend you the money against the property, because they know they can sell the property and get their money back. Is it easy to switch between self-storage facilities, or is it very difficult, switching costs? Very easy, yeah, so that's very easy. the distribution channels are removalists. Were they all locked up or were they accessible? I'll give you that one. They were very easy to access the removalists. Delivery and services, they're a good reputation for service. You won't know this, so I'll give you that. It's poor service in the industry. Is there a good reputation for quality and reliability? It was a fairly poor reputation in the industry. Do you need a lot of qualifications and experience to set up a self-storage facility? No. So very, very few qualifications. And is there a deep intellectual property here in this industry?
No.
No, so nothing. So if you have a look on the chart, that's the other problem we've got. One, the substitutes of free storage, that's bad, and it's easier to start up. So you've got these, what I call mum and pop operators, these little independent facilities starting up everywhere. So that's the other thing that's keeping the profitability down in this industry. So what do we write about in the business plan? Only a couple of things for entrance. Let's have a look. I said basically it's very easy to be a new entrant in this industry. There's a new entrant called a real estate investment trust, which came in and bought Orange Self-Storage. That capital group is codenamed for GE Capital, came in and bought Miller's. So a big US company started to expand globally and buy Miller's Self-Storage here in Australia. They spent $33 million buying. What did I write about barriers to entry? I said it's very easy to start up. All these little mum and pop operators have started up. 70% of the market is full of these small operators, and they're keeping the profitability of the industry down. As the market becomes more mature, it will become less attractive for the mum and pops to start up. So eventually the profitability will increase. Let's do, we do competitors now. Now, the life cycle for competitors. Here, in the introductory phase, the key competitive element here is to educate your customers about the features of your product or service. You've got to tell everybody, I guess, why you're different or why your product's different. I guess if you've got no competitors in the market, you're starting up for the first time, I worry about that. I worry about markets where you've got heaps of competitors or none. Why would I worry if you've got no competitors? Sorry? Yeah, the customer may not need the product, absolutely. Or what else? Why am I worried if you've got no competitors? One, the customer may not need the product. Two, what? Sorry?
Everyone else thinks it's bad.
Everyone else thinks that nobody else is doing it? Yeah. One of the companies I talked to in the first lecture was Evolution, and this is the guy that's got offices in the US and the UK and, or Europe and Australia now. What he did was he came up with a piece of technology that you could plug in. He did a test on the NRMA, and he plugged it into their infrastructure. He was able to read all of their lines of code, so he could read their software. He also diagnosed their hardware environment, their communications environment, and from that he could figure out where the bottlenecks were or the infrastructure problems were. NRMA had this problem with their policy management system. It was running very slow out in their branches, and they didn't know where the problem was. They went and talked to IBM, which was their hardware supplier, and IBM said, look, no guarantees, but you need, I think, about a $13 million upgrade in your hardware. It might fix it. They went to their software supplier in Canada and they said, well, no guarantees, but I think you need to go to the next version of software, and that's about a $15 million upgrade. It might fix it. Both their hardware and software supplier suggested 13 million, 15 million. Evolution came in, diagnosed their environment, and said, there's a piece of code there, rewrite it, it'll cost you about $200,000. Then it'll cost them $200,000 for a few weeks' work. And it fixed the problem, and that's the potential that this guy had with his diagnostic tool. The trouble is, it was so advanced, he had no competitors, and I kept asking him, who are you competing against? Is it IBM? Is it this? Is it that? And he had absolutely no competitors. And what we did was, I said, right, grit your teeth and say you're like IBM's Tivoli, or say you're like HP's OpenView. And what that did was put him into a market space where customers could identify what the software was that he had, and then all he had to do was say why he's better. that was a far less expensive marketing campaign than to totally educate the market in what he had. All he had to do is copy something and then say why he's better. So if you've got no competitors, try to attach yourself to a space where there are. And usually at this introductory phase, if you're competing, there's lots and lots of areas for product development. And little companies, if you're a small company, you may get distracted on going in too many different directions. So get very focused here. As you grow, if you're a major competitor, like a tier 1 competitor, the idea is to get up that curve very quickly and secure distribution. Once you become market leader, you usually stay market leader for a long time. GM, how long did they stay global market leader for? 77 years. In the US, the number 1, 2 and 3 spots, GM, Ford and Chrysler, have only been swapped once, and then just recently with Toyota once again. So once it's set, the market stays pretty well set. So you've got to get up that curve and expand quickly, and the focus is on distribution. If you're a niche player in a growth segment, there's again lots and lots of market opportunities. What you do is become very focused on a certain customer group and embed yourself there. Now, when you get up here on the curve, if you're a market leader at the consolidation phase of the curve, what you then do is stop focusing on the customer and start looking at your competitors. Because about here, your competitors, the small ones, become quite weak, and you can start acquiring them. If you look at Bunnings, and we'll do Bunnings strategy later on, what they've done is they've acquired their way to number 1. They started buying up in the west, they came through South Australia, into Victoria, over to New Zealand, and then finally bought Queensland and New South Wales, and acquired their way to number 1. So that's what you focus on about here in that consolidation phase. Also this consolidation phase, competitors think this growth curve is going to stay like this forever, and what happens is it curves off, and they keep on adding capacity, and a lot of them make the mistake of adding too much capacity and then getting caught, and that's why they become weak, and you can pick them up fairly cheaply. So you can acquire them. If you're a niche player, if you're a small player, again, focus on a geographic area or a product type or a customer type. Did I tell you about Killer Hardware? Did I tell you about that? Yeah. If you're competing against Bunnings and you've got a small hardware store, it was asked of me at a conference once, gee, we've got this small hardware store, how do we compete against Bunnings? They've just opened up in the area. What do you do? How do you compete against Bunnings? Have better what?
Make sure your product better than theirs.
How? Higher quality?
Bunnings will be low quality stuff, so yeah, there's top end.
Go to the top end, excellent. That's one way. So get very focused on the product and go very niche and high quality. That's one way. Any other way? Sorry, customer service. That's what a lot of people do. They might attend and try to play on that a lot, aren't they? We've got the best service in the industry. Yeah? Has Bunnings got great service? No, not really. I mean, they're trying, but not really. So that's another way of doing it. Yeah. Has anybody seen Killer Hardware? They're a little hardware store in Willoughby. Again in Willoughby, High Street Willoughby, and all they do is knobs. They just do knobs, and they got very focused on one category of hardware, which are not. They're a knob shop, yeah. And if you go there on Saturday morning, it's queues. Their service is horrible, and they don't refund. They don't do any returns or anything. So everything else is horrible, but they've got high quality, as you suggested, high quality, but in a certain product category. The best architectural knobs in Sydney, and they're crowded on a Saturday morning. So that's another way of doing it. You know, Band-Aid. How would you go and take on Band-Aid? A company called Q-Rate did. So we're a niche player, and we're going to take on the market leader, the mass market of Band-Aid. How would you do it? Better design? How do you better design a Band-Aid? Hey, what? Put little pictures on it, which is what Curate did. They targeted kids, and they put pictures on it. That's too hard for Band-Aid to do. Yeah? Band-Aid are producing lots and lots of Band-Aids through their manufacturing facility. Doing that is too hard. So that's what Curate did. They targeted one specific segment and became a niche. Yeah? The other thing you do is, if you're a small niche player, you franchise. You start up a franchise chain or a buying cooperative and try to get economies of scale by joining together in buying groups. That's what those are. Now, at this point of the life cycle curve, this is where it starts flattening out, and very mature markets like Pepsi and Coke know how each other competes. They've been competing for the better part of 100 years. They know how each other competes. What they do is try to keep the margins that they're making in the business. How much do you reckon Coke, the bottling company, makes on a can of Coke? What sort of gross margin? It's about 70-something%. How much does the cola concentrate? There's two companies in Coke. There's a concentrate and then there's the bottling company. So the bottling company makes 70%. How much do you think the concentrate company makes that sells the syrup? About 70-something% as well, yeah? So when you're making that sort of money, these two don't compete head-on aggressively. What they do is they try to maintain their competitive advantages and build them and lock the market up. I mean, have Pepsi and Coke locked that market up? Yeah? You know these impulse fridges in 7-Eleven, who do you reckon owns those? One or the other. You know these fountains in McDonald's or at the pubs, who do you think owns those? One or the other, absolutely. Yeah. The vending machine. Have you seen Pepsi and Coke through one vending machine of late? Look next time, who do you think owns those? They've locked the whole market up. It's either one or the other, yeah? And you'll see bottled water in the vending machines. Mount Franklin, who owns that? Okay. You'll see, you know, juices, what is it? Golden Valley, who owns that? Coke, yeah? What they do is, you've got all of these slots for substitutes, which is orange juice and water and all these. It's either owned by Coke or Pepsi, yeah, to fill up the slots. Okay. So that's one market where it's all locked up. If you look at also at maturity, what also happens is they start integrating up and down the supply chain. So they start buying up their suppliers and also integrating, buying up their retailers or the distributors to secure distribution. And if they see any entrants come into the market, they hit them while they're on the beaches. They defend their market very, very.
Horizontal integration by everyone.
It's not. That's not what. But I'll talk to you about it later. That's not what horizontal is. But yes, you do get that. I'll talk to you about it later. And also at maturity, if you're a niche player, how do you compete in a very mature market? I deal with a company called Ubico. Anybody heard of Ubico? Out west, yeah? Yeah. What do Ubico make? Boxes, pallets, and cardboard boxes and pallets. How do they go? Who's the big pallet maker in the industry? CHEP. CHEP's producing masses of pallets. How do these guys compete against CHEP? If you know them, how do they compete? You don't know? They make tailor-made pallets. They make pallets to your specific requirements. So when Warman, what's it called, Warman, are shipping pumps or great big machines overseas, they'll build a tailor-made pallet and box to contain this big centrifugal pump or whatever it is that they're shipping. And that's how they compete. That is too hard for CHEP to do, or Visy, or one of the big cardboard packaging, or Amcor. They won't do it. So that's how they compete. Find a very small niche that's too hard for the big players, compete like that. Yeah. If your market's in decline, we're over the other side of the curve. What do Philip Morris do? Cigarettes. Is their market in decline?
Yep.
And it's getting more so. Focus on niches that are going to decline more rapidly. Who do Philip Morris target specifically? Kids. What sort of kids?
High school.
High school kids. Yeah, usually young females. That's where they figure they'll get 30 or 40 years out of them before they die. So target a market that's declining less rapidly. And yeah, that'll do. Right, so let's have a look at the competitive position. Market concentration. That's the self-storage market. Yellow storage, that's code name for Storage King, they had 9%. Miller's, orange storage, had 6%. Kennard's, blue storage, had 5%. So that's the top three. Top five got about 23%. The rest of the cottage industry, the mum and the pops, is that a concentrated or a fragmented market?
Fragmented.
Fragmented? Absolutely, yeah. Where there's most of the market is the mum and pop independents or operators. It's a very fragmented market, yeah. So that's it for Australia. There are about 503 centres or facilities in Australia. I then also had a look at it for Tarman. There were 7 centres there. The green storage, our storage facility, was about 18% of the market. Kennards was there, Miller's was there, and they had about 2 or 3 storage kings as well. So you can do the chart depending on whether you're looking at Artarmon or Sydney Metro or the world. Here's Coca-Cola. Concentrated or fragmented? If you thought Pepsi was the leader, look at that. That's back in 2006. It's actually worse today. Yeah? Coke's got about 75% of the cola market in Australia. Concentrated or fragmented?
Concentrated.
Extremely concentrated. There's only 1% for some of the independent operators. Schweppes does the distribution for Pepsi here, and that's a $3 billion market. Let's have a look at the world. That's at 2007. Coke's still 44%, Pepsi 31%. Concentrated or fragmented? Still very concentrated, yeah. The independents have only got about 10%. And that's a $62 billion market for cola revenue. Let's have a look at the auto market. Concentrate. There's number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Who's the big mover here? That's incredible. I did that a couple of years ago. It was back around the 3%. It's moved to 7% of the world, and that's as at yesterday. Concentrated or fragmented?
Fragmented?
Absolutely fragmented, yeah, very fragmented. You can see there's, what's keeping it fragmented, by the way? Trade tariffs, government, basically. The government looked at the auto industry and said, this employs a lot of people, so let's have our own auto manufacturer, our own brand, nationally. Does it really employ a lot of people? It employs a lot of robots now. So governments are starting to relax on trying to maintain their own vehicle manufacturing nationally. And so you're going to see this fragmented market start to concentrate. That's the big mover here. Have you seen, what is it, Cherry and Great Wall and all these new names coming on? China's going to be the big mover in that pie.
Every nation tries to have its own airline.
Pretty much. Yeah, that was more of a prestige thing. And it's all, is it a big employer? It was. Well, it still is. It is a big employer. Now, so markets in the 60s used to look like that. Lots of little competitors, niche players, the national people, and then the tier ones. Come the 2000s, that's what it looks like. You've got a polarisations. The people that are national or the companies in the middle have lost. It's either you're really big or you're a niche player these days. Remember the SMEs or the big national distribution companies. It's polarised. So let's have a look at the tier 1 market, and then we'll have a look at the small players, the niche players. Let's take tier 1s first. In most markets, you're going to have a number 1 player, the leader position, and then the number 2 and number 3. Very few people know who the number 3 player is. It's always number 1 and 2. It's called the leader and the challenger. And then number 1 usually has got twice as much share as number 2, which has twice as much as number 3. Very few people know who number 3 is. Let's have a look. Since World War II, the top 3 positions have not moved much. It's been 1, 2 and 3, and then in the 1950s it swapped with Ford overtaking Chrysler, and now Toyota's overtaken Chrysler. So it changes very rarely. It doesn't move a lot once those top positions are established. So most people know number 1, people know the challenger, very few people know the rest in a market, in a mature market. Let's have a look at cola. I want you to give me 1, 2 and 3 please for cola. What's number 1? Coke, number 2? Pepsi, number 3? Yeah, Schweppes, because you saw it on the bloody chart, didn't you? Car hire. Number 1, car hire. Hertz is number 1, number 2. Number 2? Avis, yeah, and number 3. Yeah, it could be Eurocard, could be budget, could be thrifty, could be a lot of them, yeah. But that's number 1, number 2. Let's do batteries. Energizer. Everyone see that's Gen Y talking. Everyone knows them as Energizer. What's the company? Duracell's the challenger. Energizer's number 1. Duracell's number 2. But what's the company? See, when I was growing up, everyone knew them as Eveready. Now. Hello, but you got it right. That's number one. That's number two. Now, who owns the bunnies? Who owns the bunnies? Who owns them? Duracell owns the bunnies, and the smartest thing I've ever seen a company do was Eveready Energizer also released some bunnies too, and it confused people. They can't quite remember who had the bunnies.
Fuck your advertising strategy.
Chickens. Bingham, and who's two? Steggles, who's three? KFC gets supplied by Inghams. Who's three for five chickens? Everyone knows number one and two. Bayarda's number three. Bayarda, nobody's heard of them. Coffee shops. Starbucks and Origins, who's number three? Printers. HP and
Canon?
HP, Canon, and then the rest, yeah. Microchips.
Intel.
Intel and AMD and yeah. So some markets are not stay a bit more fragmented. If you take accounting firms, that's back in 2005, they haven't changed much. PwC, KPMG, Ernst & Young and Deloitte have pretty well got an even spread here. It's fairly concentrated. And the reason it's not number one and number two is you need an accounting firm to do the auditing and one to do the management accounts. So you've got a natural market where you have to have a few more competitors in it. Some markets will never concentrate. You happen to be in a market that will not concentrate because it's dependent on your what? Skills and brains. Electricians, landscapers, plumbers, it's dependent on their skills. It's very fragmented, the craft skills. Software development, it's not going to concentrate. There's lots and lots of little software companies because it's dependent on your brains and your skills. Automotive repair, again, dependent on their skills. It's a craft skill. Medical, architects, engineers, dependent on your skills. It'll stay fragmented. Restaurants, dependent on the chef's skills, and there's lots of different varieties of food, so it will stay fragmented. Although they've tried to consolidate it a lot with these franchise chains. Estate agents, depending on local market knowledge and their skills. Plant nurseries, again, local plant knowledge and their skills. Automobile manufacturers, the government has kept that fragmented, but that's starting to concentrate now that the government doesn't worry about it too much. Wine, again, depending on winemakers' skills. Yep.
Aren't real estate very concentrated with
Very fragmented, but they're concentrating by franchising. They're putting them together in like those, what's the franchise chains? Century 21 and those things, they're starting to concentrate it, yeah?
So franchises doesn't reflect if it's a niche, if it's franchise.
It's a way of concentrating a market by franchising, yes. So it is concentrating. If you look at here, these tier one players, not only are they geographically global, but they're now multi-segment. So they break up the market segments. If you look at Mercedes-Benz, where does it start? In Germany, yeah, and now it's obviously gone to the world. And they started with that. They started with trucks and buses and high-end. That was almost sort of a limousine, very high-end car. And now they pretty much go after every market segment, lots of different cars. You can also be a small niche player, a single segment player. The key to being a niche player is be very focused and on one single segment. What's that about, Bob? That's the UK, that's France, yeah. In World War II, when they attacked France to try to extract the Germans, they did not go all over the coastline to invade. They found a small bit of coastline in Normandy and broke through there. So pick a particular part of the market, target that and break through there. What you're doing is, you're not breaking through a coastline, you're breaking through the customer's mind when you're marketing. So find a place that you can break through and attack that point when you're niche player. Usually, these big competitors are in fortified castles. And you're a little niche player in the market here. How hard is it if you're out here trying to break into a castle? Not easy. All I have to do is sit here with big vats of hot oil and tip all this shit all over you, see? So it's very difficult to take on a big player in the market, find a small segment where they're not looking and go after that. Usually an niche player has a single product and drives one powerful attribute of that product into the customer's mind. Also, that's the coast of Normandy. How much do you reckon the Germans were thinking about protecting that bit of coastline when they were trying to stop an Allied invasion coming into France?
Very little.
Is that a good place to land?
No.
No. Normandy's not all like that. There was a stretch of beach, but the Germans pretty much ignored Normandy and thought that the Allied forces were probably coming in Brittany or somewhere like that to land. Instead, what the Allied forces did was found a bit of coastline where the Germans weren't looking, find an uncontested area, and then come in. They landed on beaches, obviously, but they hit there. So find a segment of the market that's uncontested and go after that, a surprise attack. Now, you can define your niche by either geography or by the product itself or by a particular customer segment. I'll just show you a way of doing that. If you're in, say, the golf market, the golf courses, let's have a look. That's St Ives here. There's one golf course there. There's another golf course there. What's that called? Avondale or something? Or Avondale Golf Club? Yeah. And then there's another golf club here. What's that one called? Gordon Golf Club? Yeah. Now, remember that 1 kilometre rule? There's 1 kilometre out from that golf club. Are either of these two competitors here? They're sort of a bit further away, aren't they, from that 1 kilometre rule? And 80% of your customer base is going to come from that. And that's how a lot of the small businesses do it. They geographically niche up, or they stay away from each other geographically. And in self-storage, we did exactly the same thing. There's 98% of the customers within 3 kilometres, and it just misses out there. So that's done by geography. By products, the guy that started Domino's Pizza,
Great.
he started home delivery pizza within 30 minutes. What he was competing against was Pizza Hut. I don't know if you remember them. You probably see one in Cessnock. The restaurants used to look like that, big car park. Inside you could actually have a glass of red wine, sit down, you get served, and eat pizza, and there was dessert, there were waiters and waitresses and stuff. Yeah, that's the old Pizza Hut. That's what Domino's came in with. Can you sit down here in Domino's? No, it's pretty much stand up, and it's all about home delivery. So they didn't think about pizzas as being restaurants. They said, it's pizza, but it's home delivery pizza. So they carved out a tiny piece of that product and differentiated themselves on the basis of a product. What's Pizza Hut done since?
The same thing.
Yeah, followed suit. It was so successful that Pizza Hut had to copy them and get rid of the staff and the car parking in the restaurant and copy the Domino's pizza concept. So that's another way of doing it, by product. Or another way of doing it is by customer group. If you're a PR agency, a friend of mine, she has a daughter and she's in public relations. I said, right, what you've got to do is get to know all the doctors, because she's in the medical market. She's writing for a journal, a trade journal called Doctor. I said, go to every conference, get to know all the medical doctors, get to know the practitioners, get to know every surgeon, because as soon as some medical instrument is coming to Australia or somebody wants to launch a new product, they want to contact a PR person, you'll be niched. You'll be the person, the expert that knows everybody. They contact you first to go and get the articles released, etc. So that's another way of doing it, by customer. And by the way, if you're an engineer, how you can differentiate yourself against all the other engineers is become an expert in one particular field or one particular customer group. What did we write about in the diagnostic? I'll do these for you. Are the competitors ruthless, or are they comfortable in napping? They were fairly comfortable in napping at the time. There wasn't a lot of spare capacity in the market. There was a lot of demand, so I selected that. Did they want to, were they vertically integrating? They weren't really, the competitors. Were there lots and lots of competitors, many small ones, or only a few? There are lots of small ones. lots of small independent competitors. It was very competitive, the pricing base. There wasn't a lot of mergers and acquisitions occurring. Is it easy to exit? Is it easy to get out and close a self-storage facility down? Absolutely, yeah, because you can just turn it into a warehouse and rip out the inside. So it's easy to exit. The competitors' resources, they were very small players, and there are a lot of fixed costs in the land and the buildings. So if I look at market attractiveness, our problems are there. Competitors aren't really much of a problem at all in this market. And I looked at the competitor share, and in your assignment you'll need to do this for the Apple case study too. The market size is 370 million, which we got before, and for each competitor I put in the revenue. Our revenue was quite small, 1.2 million. Storage King was 33 million, Miller's was 22 million, Kennard's was 19 million. So you enter those things in, it works out the market share for you. And the other thing is, it'll work out whether you're a niche player, a market leader, or a mid-tier player. So all those things are worked out for you. Yeah. If you, it also will tell you whether your market's concentrated or fragmented. So it works that out just from the numbers. And then if you click on that, it'll give you a market share graph too. Okay. Now, competitor competencies, we had a look at before. For retail, price is important, location is important, the range is important. Also for storage, security and quality and drive-up access, which was the feature, was important too. So let's have a look at that. On the competencies page, what I did was it puts in your competitors' names here, and then you put in what's important in your market. You'll have to do that for your iPod and also for your personal computer. Decide what are the keys for the market, whether it's price or some sort of feature. It might be memory, it might be processor speed. So I put those down there. Then I weighted the importance of these. So first, find your key success factors, weight them, and then out of 5, rate each of the competitors out of 5 on each of those dimensions and give them a rating. Yeah? It will tell you whether the key success factors from those ratings are relevant or not, and it'll also work out whether green storage is aligned or opposite to certain competitors. Then you click on a chart, and it'll give you a chart like that. Now, that chart might be hard to read, but I'll just tell you how you read it for storage. Here, the leader was Yellow Storage or Storage King. It was really good at price. It had a low price, and also it had great locations. It had more locations than any other storage operator. Now, in retail, is location and price important?
Yes.
Yep.
That's why they're the market leader, because they're lined up with their keys were what was important in retail, and that's why they were the market leader. Here's Miller's. They had great locations, high visibility, and they also had good quality. Is that what's important in the storage business?
Not really.
Not as much, and that's why they're the challenger, or they were number 2. They couldn't get to market leadership, but they were number 2. Here's us, Green Storage. We're a niche player. We were great at drive-up access. We had great quality, and we had one of the best ranges in the ranges of storage units, and good security. Will we ever become market leader? No. It's not what's important in this market, but will we make money?
Yes.
We'll make a lot of money because we've got distinctive competencies that only a few people in the market will want, but at least I want it. Yeah. So that's how you read the chart. So let's just go around. Green storage, why were we good? We had the best range of sizes in the market. We had that access where you could drive up to the facility, so we could market that to the removalists. We had very good security, the PIN access and the CCTV security, so we're out there on our own there. And a great quality facility. It really looked fantastic, but we would never be market leader because Yellow Storage was the market leader. Now, the other thing it told me was that we were opposite. We were quite opposite to, see that diagram there? It's quite opposite to the Yellow Storage diagram. So we were quite different. If you think that diagram's you're just playing with different colours and lines, when I do a tutorial with you on the business plan, we plotted a diagram for civil contracting company and identified that the contracting company was quite opposite to a different contracting company, We put both of them together. They did a joint venture bid to the RTA and won a $100 million contract just from that diagram. So it was worth $20 million a year to them in revenue, just from being able to read the diagram correctly. So what do we write in the business plan for competitors? I copied a few charts into the business plan, as you can see there. I said the market's very fragmented. 77% is still the small mum and pop operators, so it's still a cottage industry. And green storage is going to be a niche player at national level. I put that market share chart in, and also the market share chart for carbon. Competitive influences. I said it takes about 2 years to find a site, get council approval, build and open the facility. Takes another 2 years to get 80% occupancy. So geographically, the storage facilities are kept apart, and that's what makes them not compete and cut each other to ribbons. It takes such a long time. I also put a chart in about occupancy. Self-storage is travelling at about 80% occupancy, Australia and New Zealand, so they're not really competing ruthlessly. And it takes about 2 years for 84% of the facilities to get to about 70% occupancy. So it's a long process, and so that's why they don't compete ruthlessly as well. Then I talked a bit about the competitor strategies. Rather than going through all this, I'll tell you about Yellow Storage. Yellow Storage was Storage King, and it was two accountants in Storage King that decided that the US competitor was going to come in and buy Millers. So these two accountants got out, hired a secretary, and went to all the little independent storage operators and said, become part of our Storage King franchise and protect your market from the big US guys coming in. And they did extremely well. They went and signed up all these little independents and set up a franchise chain. So in marketing, fear is a really good incentive to go and market fear out to these independent operators. So that's how they started up. Let's have a talk about Millers. Millers got bought by GE Capital Group. Actually, they got bought for $113 million. They had revenue about 33 odd, and they're at 94% occupancy. When the CEO got appointed to Millers, coming in from the US, he hadn't realised that we just introduced GST there in year 2000, and they lost a lot of customers because he put the rates up, and their occupancy went to about 80-something%. So they became strategically weak. When I was doing this, I thought they're an acquisition target for another company who actually did buy them. Kennards, yeah. So they became an acquisition target. Millers was who set the colour orange in the industry for storage facilities? Do you know where you drive around and see an orange facility? It's usually self-storage. It was Millers. Why did Millers paint their facilities orange?
Recognition.
That's what?
Recognition.
It attracts attention. You go through North Sydney, all you see is blue and red on the logos there. Self-storage, they own the colour orange, and the reason was it was Jim Miller's favourite colour. That's the only reason they were painted orange. It was his favourite colour. Anyway, but it did attract attention. Kennards, or Blue Storage, they started back in '73. They were aligned with their Kennards hire business. They were spread geographically. We called them the most experienced operators in the industry. They were the geriatrics. They had all these retirees running their facilities, and they all had no teeth. Anyway, so that was Kennards. And let's have a look right here. Here's the key success factors. In the industry report said service was one of the biggest. Range was unit range was a big one. Access, location, and price was a key success factor in the industry. For your case study, you've got to figure out pretty much the same thing for premises and pipeline. So I wrote about that: location, price, security, range, access. They were all very important. Right. That's competitive stuff. Now let's have a look at the environment analysis. Which is this bit. See how far we get with this today. So it's not environmental. That is only a piece of the environment analysis. We're going to look at the regulatory, economic, environmental, societal and technological impact on the industry. Yeah. Let's have a look at regulation first. Yeah. What the governments have done is downsize. So since about the 80s, they've privatised everything. These were all government owned. All the banks were owned by the government back in the 70s, and now they've privatised everything. So everything's going to smaller government and deregulation. That's an impact on the industry. Now, a lot of people are critical about China, and they say, well, it's lagging in its democratic government, and it's lagging in its illegal environment, its business practices. What age is China in? Which age? The industrial age, yeah? So China's still evolving and it's coming through the industrial cycle. We're in the informational age, they're one cycle behind. If we go back to our industrial age, we had bush rangers and a police force that used to go and shoot people and hang people, yeah? So just remember, if we go back to when we were in the industrial age, we weren't much better. Yeah? So China's coming through, but they won't hit the information age until about the 30s, 2030, and they'll get there. And the other thing about regulation is when you're considering government and how they're regulating your industry, just remember all governments are driven by that, by votes and the ballot box. Most of the unpopular decisions for industry will be made in the early term of office. So if it's a 3 or 4 year cycle, most of the bad things get done early, and then they think about getting re-elected. So most of the good things or popular decisions get done later in the cycle. So if you're thinking about an industry, think about the impact of what government's doing. Now let's have a look at the economic changes. And GDP. What this is a chart or a map of GDP in billions of dollars. The dark bits are where most of the revenue is, the gross domestic product. It's in the US, it's there in Europe, in Eastern Europe, and Asia. That's where most of the revenue generating countries are. North America's got 23% of the world's GDP. South America's got 6%. So that's what we call the Americas region. Western Europe's got 22. This is as at today, basically. Eastern Europe's 4, and then the Middle East is 5. So there's another, let's add that up, 26, 31%, isn't it? And Africa, that takes it to 35. And that's the middle region. And then the Asia Pacific, you've got 29% there, and then India. So that brings it up to about 36%. That's the Asian region. Who's winning here? That's over since 1973 to 2011. Who's winning? Asia. Can you see how Asia's picking it up? They've gone from 20 to 36. Who's losing? America's slid down to about 30. It was 40, but it's slid down to 30 just of late, and Europe's also declining. So Asia's picking it up. If you want to see where most of the economies are generating most of the wealth. Here's a little video of aeroplanes. The yellow dots are aeroplanes. You'll see where the GDP is in the world. This is taken from satellites. These are aeroplanes. See the dark patch? That's night. So America's just going to sleep there as the dark. See Australia's waking up, and see Asia's coming on. Each one of those dots are aeroplanes, okay? And you'll see where the heavily or the densely populated the money-making countries are. See Europe's coming up now? Yeah, it's waking up. Australia's going to sleep, so is Asia. Watch what happens when the US comes up. So Europe's going to sleep. So can you see where most of the GDP is in the world? It's in these regions here, and Asia, a little bit down in Australia. So GDP per capita, this is per head or standard of living. The dark bits, America and Canada, are it's not just GDP, but it's GDP divided by the population. The big countries with high standard of living are there. In Europe, in Japan, and in Australia. Yeah. So if you think Australia is doing quite well, yeah, it's ranked 8th in the world for standard of living. It's very high up. How many countries in the world? 229, and we're ranked 8. If you look at the top 20 cities, this is as at 2012, because it changes every year. We've got 1 in the top 20, we've got 2 in the top 20. Auckland's there, that's sort of Australia. And Wellington's there too. By the way, 10 years ago, how many do you reckon we had in the top 10 of our cities? All of them. Yeah, all of them 10 years ago. Yeah, that's the rest. We're at 21 with Perth, Canberra, Adelaide, and Brisbane. Yeah, so our standard of living is very high. Now let's try to explain it. Why have these regions got a much higher GDP per capita or higher standard of living? People used to think it was east versus west, and this is only my opinion. This is a very sort of engineering, factual approach to it. So if you put 10 economists in the room, you get 10 different opinions. I'm only going to give you one, and you can either believe it or not. It's fine with me. But if you draw a line here, why do you think these economies have developed ahead of, say, all of this in the middle there? People used to say communism versus capitalism, east versus west. What do you think? What sort of resources?
Fertile land.
Arable lands and fertile lands, that's one explanation, absolutely. Is it very fertile here in arable? What about here? Isn't that the lungs of the world? Yeah.
They got to chop down the rainforest.
Sorry?
They have to chop down the rainforest.
They have to chop down. Do you know how much topsoil there is in a rainforest? Has anybody been to the Amazon? I've been to the Amazon. There's about I don't know 10 mil of topsoil in the rainforest. The rainforest is, as soon as a leaf hits the floor, it's gone within a day. It's redigested by the forest and it's back up there. And what these people do is they come down and slash and burn and knock down all the trees. All the trees burn off. The carbon then puts another 10 or so mil on the topsoil. That allows them to get 1 year of grain farming out of that land. Then the soil goes sour. They then turn it over to grass, put some cattle on it for another 2 years, and then move them on to the next bit of rainforest that they've chopped down. It takes them 10 years for the primary rainforest to re-establish itself, and then another 40 years for the secondary rainforest. How dumb is that? That's really dumb. Yeah. Go and have a look. Until you actually go there, you don't know how stupid it is. Anyway, I've got a theory. If you just draw a line there where the Tropic of Cancer is, and then the Tropic of Capricorn is, what's the temperature like here? Yeah, it's pretty hot. So what I'm going to do is try to explain why that's all brown, but I've got a different explanation for that bit there. So let's do that. That's pretty hot there. The next two regions are cooler, and that's where most of the agriculture and arable land, some people say more, is, and then the rest is covered with snow and shit. So if you look here in these sections, that's where the economy went from nomadic to agricultural, didn't it? In that agricultural age. At least we had a start on going agricultural. If you look at the hot section, it's covered with that, and you really couldn't get into the agricultural age, or it's covered with rainforest. And how many mils of rainforest got on it? It's not really suitable for primary production or agricultural production. So that's one explanation for why those economies or countries didn't quite get there. The other reason is, have you been in the hot part? Do you feel like you're motivated to work? Yeah? Have you gone up to like Cairns or the Whitsundays? All you want to do is just veg out, don't you? It's not conducive to being productive in these things. And also, if you look at these hot climate countries, they're full of malaria and a whole bunch of other diseases. The pharmaceutical companies could have eradicated them years ago. Why haven't they?
Life-dependent drugs.
There's what?
Life-dependent drugs.
But these are life-dependent drugs. Yeah, they could have eradicated a lot of these hot diseases. Why haven't they?
Yeah, because you're dependent on those drugs for life, aren't you?
They can't sell them anymore.
They're not going to make any money out of them, are they? Because it's all poor people. Yeah. So they're investing in like arthritis drugs, where the developed economy people are getting, and they can make a heap of money out of them. Yeah, they're not going to make money out of those. So that's another thing holding these regions back. Now let's have another look at it. This bit here, we need to explain this bit as well. There's mountains there.
Yeah.
I had a look at the Global Corruption Index. Now, isn't that quite similar to the GDP chart that I just showed you? Yeah. And it sort of maps quite well. Now, unfortunately, with the information age, corruption's becoming far more visible. What was on the weekend? Just what's his name? Coney? Yeah. Coney's running around thinking, oh yeah, I'll just take all these kids and kill their parents and all that. What he didn't bargain on was bloody Facebook and social media, did he? What's going to happen is a bunch of US troops are going to come in under the cover of darkness and take him out because of a social media thing. Yeah. So corruption is becoming far more visible now. But these monarchies and dictatorships, which are right throughout those countries, have held them back. And the thing that's going to take out corruption in the world is technology and media. It's going to expose it a lot more. Whenever you get into a country, I've been through countries in Asia, and you start to see that tells me you've got a corrupt government. You go through Bali and all the resorts, all the private industry stuff is absolutely spectacular. The resorts look fantastic. Walk out on the street and you've really got to keep looking down because you'll fall in a hole. Yeah, so, there's footpaths that are unfinished, there's gutters that are not well made. Yeah, that tells me people are on the take in government. It's corrupt. So that's something that's also holding the economies back. And that's why now you've got the Arab Spring, because everybody's got the internet and got social media. It's made this far more visible, and people are getting upset at the fact that we have to live in environments like that. So we need to take out the monarchies and the dictatorships. If you look at war or global instability, again the same pattern appears. Yeah. And the statistics are nearly 75% of the world's many of the poorest people are involved in civil war. Strong religions have supported feudal societies and long-standing civil wars, illiteracy in 50% of the population. Which 50% does religion keep down and illiterate? Women, absolutely. Yeah. So let's have a look at the global religion map. Looks pretty much the same too, doesn't it? 50% of Arab women can't read or write. Bill Gates said if countries are not fully utilising half their talent, they're not going to develop. Yeah. Developed countries use 100% of their population to produce knowledge, and so that's a problem. We used to use religion for population control, and it used to work. Now we've replaced it with government. In the developed world, we've sort of gone a bit further away from religion and more thinking about governments for controlling us. Look at global literacy, again the same problem. Now, let's have a look at this region, this developing economy here. Around 1 billion new consumers are going to enter over the next decade with household incomes above $5,000. When you get above $5,000 a year, you've got discretionary income to spend on plasma TVs and stuff like that. Yeah? So we're going to have to absorb or grow from 4 trillion in spending to 9 trillion in spending by 2015. Let's have a look at we'll have a look at China in particular. China is currently in the industrial age. It'll go into the information age by 2030. The trouble is China is ahead of Australia on everything except for standard of living. Let's have a look at GDP. They're 10 times us. We're 1.4 trillion, they're 10 times us. There's growth, they're way ahead. Let's have a look at standard of living. That's our average GDP per person in Australia, 61,000. That's China's. Yeah. So they've got a long way to go on catching up with standard of living. If you want to know what the biggest economies are in the world, China's number 2, but by 2015 it will pip the US off. India's number 4, probably this year it will take out Japan. It's going to exceed Japan. So India will be number 3 in the world. Brazil has recently overtaken the UK earlier this year, so it's changing. The developed economies are now coming through. Let's have a look at Asia for market size. There's China, it's about 42% of Asia. Japan's there at 16. See how India's going to overtake them? It's not far off Japan. India will overtake them probably this year or next year. We're very small in Asia, we're only 3%. Let's have a look at growth. China growing very quickly. India's up there. Japan, see how Japan's going to go backwards? The fact that they've had the tsunami and all of these natural disasters hasn't helped them, and Australia's growing like any other developed nation fights at population growth. Well, how's China doing it? It's going to be, it's the world's largest population. It's also the world's largest tribe. What does that mean? Any Chinese people here? What does that mean, the world's largest tribe? China's been very decentralised in the way they've grown. They've got an extensive network of business people out in every country, and that's the way they've done it. There are 85 million Chinese outside China and thousands of Chinatowns. Yeah? Go to any country and there's a Chinatown and a big Chinese community, so they're very decentralised in their approach to the world. After World War II, the Chinese communists spread their manufacturing widely through China. The reason is they were worried about Japan invading them again. So let's make it all small and spread it all over China. So they ended up with lots of small manufacturing plants scattered everywhere, which aided entrepreneurship and privatisation. Years later, when they started to go towards capitalism and communism, it was very easy because it was all small. China switched from communism to capitalism. They still say they're communists, but they're not really, by evolution. And they've got a very highly decentralised strategy to becoming number one in the world, which they will do. If you compare that to another communist country like Russia, under Stalin, they built these massive manufacturing plants, centralised everything and built things in sectors. So all the tanks are made in this sector, all the automobiles, all the planes are made in that sector. So it was all mass produced and very, very large. So Russia's stuck with a huge, clumsy, bureaucratic, inefficient manufacturing manufacturing plants. And they tried to switch by revolution, which turned out to be hampered by a lot of corruption. They've got a very highly centralised approach. Has it worked in Russia? No. It's, what they've done is privatised, but all the KGB that are friends with Putin all own most of these large manufacturing plants and energy production plants. So it really hasn't worked. It's quite corrupt. Let's have a look. How are we going for time? We'll just finish off this section then we'll call it a day. If we look at the economic cycles, have you had the GFC explained to you, the global financial crisis? Somewhat? Let's do it. I'll try to do it in an easy way. Assets equals liabilities plus equity keeps your balance sheet balanced. Yeah. What happened was people borrowed lots of money, over 90% of their value of their home, which was their asset. They were able to borrow a lot of money when they were getting their home. So their loans were maybe 100%, maybe 110% of the value of their home. So you increase your liability, and that forced the asset prices up because there was a big market where there was free liabilities around, free loans, very easy access to them, so it pushed up the housing prices. Unfortunately though, liberal credit terms and low interest rates kept pushing up the housing prices. Unfortunately what happened is in 2006, interest rates started to go up and then people couldn't afford the repayments. So then there was an oversupply of houses on the market. When there's an oversupply, the price of houses goes down. Does your loan decrease if your house price goes down? So your loan stays constant and you've got negative equity, you become insolvent. If that stays constant and the house price goes down, you become bankrupt or insolvent. You then give the house back to the bank, and in 2010, 23% of mortgagees were holding properties that were not worth what they had borrowed. So they then became bankrupt and started giving the houses back to the bank. Does the bank want the houses? No. Absolutely not, yeah. So mortgagees began to default, give the houses back to the bank. That increased the supply of properties in the market and forced the value of the houses down even more. So if the value of the assets are going down and the liabilities are constant, what a bank does, it will borrow the money to lend the money. So it'll borrow the money from somewhere else, make 1% on the way through and lend the money. If they've just got assets back and they're still holding their liabilities and the assets have fallen, now the bank's got the problem, hasn't it? Yeah. And so what the bank does is they start withholding the money from the market because they don't want to lend any more money out. That causes more unemployment, more people default on their loans. What then happens? Banks get more houses back. So can you see how it's a vicious cycle? Yeah. Then what happens is the government comes in and bails out the bank and nationalises the bank and then takes on the debt. The government takes on the debt. When debt levels get really high, you go into these things called depressions or these bad economic cycles. When debt levels got really high in the 1880s, the depression happened, which lasted 16 years. In the 1920s, the debt levels of government got really high. So the 30s depression lasted 13 years, and in the 40s again. And you changed economic cycles through that. You went from an agricultural age to an industrial age and then to the information age. If you can see here, this is where our national debt is beyond 100%. And you see this is where you go into depression. That's where your growth goes negative. Yeah. Again, back here in 2010, we're getting near 100% on national debt or global debt, and that's where we start to go negative or we have a global financial crisis. So the real problem with governments taking on this burden is they've got to get the money from somewhere. Now, when the level of debt gets to over 90% of GDP and the government continues to run a deficit, not a surplus but a deficit, and then it becomes unserviceable where you've got a high interest rate to pay or a high bond rate, that's when you're in problems. So Greece is running a debt level of 150%. It is running a deficit of 10% a year, and its interest rate, what's our interest rate here? About 6 or 7? Their interest rate's 23. Can you see they're fucked? And it's because they've lived beyond their means for so long. I remember I started up a shipping service across the English Channel, and I was going from the UK to Belgium, UK to France. And if I had to employ a French employee, if you have to pay on costs here, you'd pay about 20%. If you pay for a French employee, you'd pay 100% on costs, which made them uncompetitive. What the on-cost did was pay for their superannuation and the dole and their unemployment benefits and all these things. Can you see how you can't keep doing that and remain as a competitive company? And that's what Greece has done and Belgium and all these European countries have done. And this was back in '97 they were doing it. So for years they haven't fixed their economy and now they're paying the price. If Europe doesn't reform from its welfare-burdened economy, it's going to become a historical theme park that well-off Asians will go and visit occasionally. Can you see the problem here? Which country's got the problem? Everyone's thinking Greece. Can you see the leader? Look at Japan, 220% debt burden. No one talks about it. See the United States, that's fucked anyway. But look at Japan. Japan is the real problem. In the order of economies, where is it in the order of the top 10? Number 3. That's what everybody is quietly nervous about. Yeah? There's one thing saving Japan, but the US is in serious trouble, France is in serious trouble, Italy was number, I think, 10 out of the top economies. That's in serious trouble because it's over 100%. Where's Australia? Here? We're doing okay, 26% as far as our public debt burden. Let's have a look at our deficit. These are the props: Spain, Japan again, UK and the United States, all running big deficits. So there's a problem. But if you multiply that by the bond rate or the interest rate, here's why Japan isn't in serious trouble. Even if it's running 220% debt, see its interest rate? 1.1, and most of it is owed domestically, so they can control their interest rate domestically. It's not even, poor old Greece can't run a debt domestically because nobody will give them money. They're at 23%. You see, if that moved to say 4 or 5%, then Japan is gone completely. Yeah. If you have a look at Italy, that's why it's got a problem. It's running 130% debt, but 5% interest rate. Let's have a look at what's that? The US. Its interest rate's about 2%. So that's, even though it's 100% debt, it's not really that bad at the moment. What's that one? That's Spain. Spain's in a bad way. Look at Australia. Although we've only got a small amount of debt, we've also got a fairly small interest rate, almost a world standard interest rate. So we're in fairly good shape. But that's why Greece is Greece. Yeah. Not really, not internationally. It's mainly all domestic, and that's why they're able to manage their interest rate at 1%. If they were external, they would have a problem because they'll have to, they'd be going up to 4 or 5, and then they're screwed pretty much. Yeah. So have a good week.
Yeah.